Welcome to the Trades Podcast, a podcast about the business of home improvement and promoting the trades to young adults.
Hey, happy days, everybody. This is the Trades Podcast. I'm Danny.
And I'm Jeff.
Yes, here we are. We got some excitement going on. It's springtime. We got the sun is out. We're in all different parts of, 3 time zones right now that we're recording. We got the Pacific, we got Central, and we got the Eastern. So we're excited to come back and just share a little bit more information about what's technology and how it's impacting us in the trades. So Jeff, I mean, we got Interplay in the past. We had Dan on before, but now we got Amanda Long. Amanda, how you doing?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. No, we're just super glad to have you here too. You know, again, Interplay has a big part in kind of a forefront, but really a pioneer in what it is that you guys are doing in regards to trainings and operations within the trades and construction. So we're excited for you to come back, for your company to come in, but for you to come in and share a little bit more about your expertise and a little bit of the area that you cover. So go ahead and introduce yourself to the Trades Podcast.
Sure, thanks. So, like Danny said, my name is Amanda Long, and I serve Interplay as our Executive Vice President of Revenue, and I just lead the customer-facing teams. But really, I think where I can have a strong opinion on the trades today and what we're seeing today is from my background. And I started a crane and rigging training company that I had with my family. And then I was able to grow that, sell it into Industrial Training International, better known as ITI, the leading provider of crane and rigging training. Was able to grow that over the course of 8 years. And then ITI was purchased by Interplay in 2024. So it's been a really fun evolution watching craftsmen and tradesmen grow in their careers. I used to do all the training, run the cranes, teach them how to rig from basic to mastery level. And I enjoyed being able to really influence the front line to now elevating my role into leading our customer facing teams, but I'm still very involved in solution sets as we craft those for our customers and such. So I think about getting into this, and my dad was in crane and rigging, and it was in the time where, you know, he led a crane and rigging group at a chemical plant, and you could still go with your dad to work at a chemical plant in that time. And so I could go sit on the crane and learn things. So I've been in and around cranes from a very young age, and I'm excited now to help influence the industry on what we need to do to educate those craftsmen to be good at their job.
Yeah,
Awesome.
amazing. I mean, crane and rigging, and that. I mean, so let everybody know where you're at, because I imagine there's cranes. Maybe, I don't want to just put it out there, but cranes probably around almost every corner out there in Texas. But what part of Texas are you in, and is that like a good headquarter for Interplay of crane and rigging?
Yeah, so I'm in Houston. So I am around the industrial mecca center of the world, and our office is a rock throw away from a highway here that's better known as Chemical Plant Row, and there could be turnarounds, and that the heavy civil construction that's happening in the massive metropolitan area of Houston is just huge. But cranes are really everywhere, and where we were able to really grow our reputation and customer base is not looking at any one specific industry, although you're going to have some like construction and manufacturing and petrochem that might have a really high use for crane and rigging, given what they're doing in that time. But they really span every industry. When you think about what people can actually lift and are allowed to lift with the human body, if it goes beyond that, they're going to need some sort of lifting device or a material handling device to be able to do it. So we don't really, we've always talked about focusing on the activity of lifting, encompassing both crane operation and rigging and material handling. We focus on that activity, not any one specific industry. And that's what's really helped us serve the heavier industrial market, specific to that content category.
We want to thank our sponsor. Superior Floor and Cabinet Designs is one of the landmark family-owned businesses in Encinitas. Owner Cheryl Robertson, with years of customer experience managing her family's hardware and cabinet business in North Park, Cheryl Robinson and the Superior team dive deep to learn about your project and help you find the perfect solution for your flooring and cabinetry needs. Call today at 760-436-0900 or visit www.superiorfloors.com.
Amanda, can we ask you to give us a little bit of an overview of the different types of cranes? Because some of us might be
Sure.
envisioning, the square, pillars that go up and you watch them build high rises. Other
Yeah.
people see the big old things going down the freeway in a truck with big tires and the cranes hanging out the front of the back, and they're lifting up, who knows what. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sure,
a
wide variety.
Yes, very much so. That's a great question. And I enjoy when we get new team members who have not really been around cranes, they now start to notice them everywhere, when you're driving down the road. And um, so you're going to have, a lot of different crane types depending on where you're working. Some of the more noticeable ones that you'll see are some that you mentioned. If they're doing commercial construction, building a high rise, that would be a tower crane. So that is where the operator is actually going to climb that tower or ride an elevator up, come over, and then climb the last bit of the way. Those can be hundreds and hundreds of feet tall. Like thinking about them building New York City skyscrapers, it's fun to think about some of the work that happens to build those huge um, art pieces of architecture, and there's still cranes sitting inside of them today because they're actually build them around and they can't dismantle the crane, so they leave it in there and continue to build the building around it. There's truck cranes that are driving down the highway. There's overhead cranes. That's going to be your, if you look in terms of numbers, every warehouse with a high bay, long bridge span is probably going to have an overhead crane that you're passing, in any given area. They're in all manufacturing settings, mobile cranes of many different types, some that take, 15 truckloads to bring in a month to erect, to one that you can drive down, pop out, get in, operate, and leave in the same 2-hour period. So they it's not really about complexity. It's more about capacity and crane type. And so, anytime you're doing crane operations, it's a critical activity, high risk activity. And so it doesn't really matter the size or what you're doing. We always have to have an extra level of care when it comes to operating a crane.
Yeah. I know one of my first experiences on a crane was building 40-story building in downtown San Diego, watching that crane, lifting everything up.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. It is a highly skilled craft. I think it takes a lot of patience and finesse, and um, operators who have that level of skill, they get in and they make entire careers out of it. Most people are career operators. They will advance into leadership and management and supervisory positions. But those that stay in their craft, it just becomes second nature to them because it's just so easy to fall into the finesse of what they're doing on a daily basis.
Hmm.
Is
Yeah.
a crane operator a high-paying job?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's not typically something that you're going to come out of high school and immediately get a crane operator position. There's a lot of entry level opportunity, as in the entire craft and trade disciplines that you're going to see. There's a lot of entry level opportunity from union apprenticeships, from company apprenticeships, from starting as a helper, starting as a rigging helper, and then there's advancement through that craft where you can work into becoming a crane operator. Something that was really important in terms of crane operation is really understanding all the limitations that come with running a crane, and what can the crane do, and where can it pick up from, and where can it put down at, what are the considerations there for the ground personnel. So oftentimes we will advise that they get some exposure to the lifting activity before they're jumping right into crane operations. A place where we might see more entry level crane positions is in a manufacturing setting where they're really getting hired in and onboarded to be able to run that overhead crane in a manufacturing setting, because it might be a supplement to their job. Their job is not crane operator, but they need to run a crane to do their job. And so that's where you might find some more entry level positions getting in there. And it just takes time to make sure that the company is responsibly putting the right person with the right skill level in there, because it is such a high risk activity.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. So Interplay comes in and would able to help a company implement some very, I mean, high measurable safety training, and if that's not something that they have already had in their system, or just update it and replace it with Interplay. Is that where I see that work with Interplay?
So that's a great question. And I would say it can be all of the above. It really kind of depends on where our customers are at in their journey of educating their workforce. So there's opportunities to come in and supplement with digital products and technology to their already existing training program. And this really kind of goes across all trades and all trade programs, and we really want to do an analysis with the customer to say, where are you at today, where do you hope to get to, so we can really begin with the end in mind for these um, the employees, so their entire workforce, to baseline against that workforce, and then help supplement or build entire training programs with our digital and simulation solutions, so really focusing on the technology side, and then coming in on some of the higher risk activities and reinforcing with hands-on training. So we really have a menu of options across educating the workforce. And we really try to point towards what is creating the best continuity across their workforce, what is the most scalable depending on how their company is structured, and what is the right training environment for the outcome that they need.
Awesome.
Yeah, the safety measure on that piece is, I mean, one itself is always going to be crucial, like you mentioned, with the high risk
Mhm.
activity that's happening with crane and rigging. Um, and so that career path, I imagine, because of Interplay's specific trainings and offerings, that it can help a company say, for an employee, if you complete this Interplay training, that you will be able to have a potential raise, you will be able to get paid more, you will be able to run different operations, different equipment, that will, obviously, hopefully, turn into some bigger paychecks. Is that something that you've heard throughout the industry so far?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it really kind of depends on the organization, what they're comfortable with, and how they measure skill progression. So, we have oftentimes people might have two levels. Maybe they have tech one and tech two, or
Hmm.
crane operator one, two. It really, you could add any trades to that. But we have a lot of our customers who take a career progression look to those levels and provide incentives to advance their skills from tech one to tech two to tech three and so on, where they're saying, there is earnings increase potential as they grow. We have others that really want them to perform skill mastery. So they might get, within a maintenance discipline, and they have, gotten to the tech 3 level, but they are still providing incentives to achieve skill or role mastery as they continue, because they really want them in that role. They're short on that role. They don't really want to see them go and advance into other areas. They're short on those technicians, and so we will help them create those career progression opportunities where appropriate. But when not appropriate, there's also opportunities for skill mastery so that they can keep that workforce, not have the attrition, that, they put a lot of effort into that young person in this instance that didn't have the skill. They don't want them to go and leave to another organization. So there's opportunity for that as well.
Yeah, that's a key indicator. I mean, employee retention is something that we've covered in the past,
Mhm.
and what those levels mean, whether it comes down from culture to the your compensation, your salary progression, and or just like you mentioned, just having that title and making sure that you are a skilled master in your trade. When you have that stamp of approval through your company, you're going to be treated as so. With all the benefits, and that's something that we've constantly talked about within these careers, where if it's a good paying job, there's no reason someone should be leaving. And there's every reason that an employer should be able to keep that employee with them throughout their whole career.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
So we are both real curious. How does VR work into your ability to train and recruit people?
That's a great question. And we have the opportunity to serve many different sectors of the market. So, both on the workforce development and education side of things, where VR can attract young people into the um, trades disciplines or, industrial craft categories that they might be looking. We have a lot of um, International Union of Operating Engineers locals who use our virtual reality crane simulators. And they use those both on their apprenticeship programs to make sure that they supplement their training programs with crane simulation to, you know, create exposure to what they would experience in the field, upskill them, put in potential hazards, but they also take those to recruiting events. So it's really cool to see that they have a tool that they can use internally for their union workforce and take out and recruit into the market. Where we have then on the other side of things, employers who are using that, virtual reality as a tool um, for onboarding and really increasing the speed to competency. So it is not our stance that we want to replace hands on learning when it comes to these high risk categories. Rather, we want to appropriately use VR to supplement and or expose them to things that we cannot recreate in a real environment. So, you might have somebody who's running a crane every day, but they don't get exposure to a certain activity. We can make sure that they do in simulation. We can make sure that they understand how to correct if a hazardous or a safety risk presents itself. And that really allows us to be dynamic in the way that these people are learning, because there's thousands of scenarios within the simulator that we can really make sure are tailored to that employer's activities, what they're doing with the crane, maybe what they're doing in other environments. And then there's assessments in there as well. So they really have confidence, and they were put into this immersive environment and they were asked to perform a skill. Here is a baseline understanding of what this employee is able to go out and do in the field.
Absolutely. The the VR setups, are those designed for different individual types of equipment?
Yes, yeah. So we on the crane simulator, it is specifically around cranes, and it has 9 different crane types available, and it is paired with the tactile hardware needed to actually run that crane. So if you are running a carry deck, a Broderson carry deck, we worked with the manufacturers, and put that exact crane with that functionality and into our physics engine within the virtual reality simulator, and they are actually pulling the same controls that they both see in the headset and is on the actual Broderson crane. So they're paired with a hardware component that gives that tactile feel to what they're experiencing in simulation.
So they're actually sitting in the seat, pulling the levers, pushing the pedals while watching a simulated environment.
Correct. And they're completely immersed in that environment, which is different than some of the other simulator offerings in that they are completely in VR, so getting that full 360-degree experience to being on the job site has really helped organizations feel comfortable in using that as a tool to really baseline against their skills.
Yeah,
Yes.
those the skills piece is going to be a huge part where, that career path is going to continue to keep building for those young people, interested in this industry. When you see it from the safety perspective, like you were mentioning, the lifting and crane, I can see there's going to be some big challenges coming in on that part. I mean, What are the challenges that you're seeing through the safety measures trying to implement this for the younger generation? Or are they really adapting to the VR safety piece and understanding that part where, it's not going to be replicated, but how level of a serious safetiness this is going to be for when you're out in the real field?
Yeah, that's
Mm.
a great question. I mean, the way I view it is that the lifting and the crane industry are it's one of those environments where safety and training are not, you can't separate them, right? So they always come paired together, and OSHA makes that really clear. In construction, employers have a massive responsibility, as well as in general industry. There's just a few extra rules in the construction side of things. And the employers have to make sure that they are checking all the boxes and ultimately signing off that this operator can go out and perform the task on their behalf. And the challenge is that compliance alone is not enough. So even if we are meeting those minimum compliance regulations or standards, they still really need to have the skill and the high consequence environment that they're in. And you're dealing with, dynamic loads and job sites and, limited visibility maybe. And so there's really no room for guesswork. So I really feel like the challenge is not just whether somebody's been trained once, but are they truly prepared to perform the job safely in real world conditions? And that's where we use a lot of technology to expose them and make sure that it is a scalable way when these pieces of equipment are expensive to run in the field, right? People don't just have 10 cranes laying around for the new operators that they might onboard. Depending on the industry, their attrition might be really high. And so it's important that we use technology to supplement those training environments where safety is not an option. As a second challenge I really see is also workforce readiness. So a lot of companies are bringing in, we all know about how many skilled trade positions we need to fill in the coming years, in the hundreds of thousands. And we're bringing in newer workers faster because they have to, but that increases the importance of the structured, measurable training. So I really do see the pressure right now to bring the people in, ramp them well, and without compromising the safety. And that takes a lot of exposure for the way they're going to critically think once they get into those roles in the field.
Yeah, we've been absolutely been told, and we just did some statistics through the Bureau of Labor Statistics also of finding out just the demand that there is within all levels of the trades. And I'm sure you're probably hearing the same thing through crane and rigging, I imagine.
Absolutely. It, the skilled labor shortage is across all industrial crafts and skilled trades that are, from if I look at the spectrum where we've got, residential on one end from a construction and contractor standpoint and everything, every skilled trade it takes to support that industry all the way up to heavy industry, maybe running, process at a nuclear plant and everything in between. There is lifting operations across that entire space. Obviously, more as you get in towards the heavy industry side of things. And when it comes to the technology advancing those activities, right? Because there's a lot of advancements that come out, and the way that we build cranes, the way that we can lift objects, and the way that we attach those objects to the lifting device. There's a lot of technology advancement, but it hasn't materially reduced the risk associated with those activities. And so the gap keeps growing in crane and rigging it's not just those. We talk about those a lot because that's the coined term for anything lifting related, but we've got signal persons and lift directors and being able to advance into site supervision and rigging engineers and really people with an understanding of what it takes to move heavy objects through space. We have a major shortage in that area. And if the more we can get it out there, the more we can get the career opportunities out there, because there is management and leadership opportunity to advance. I think the faster we can point young people towards the lifting industry.
Absolutely. The industry across the board is growing. I know, like the March jobs report, they expected 70,000 or something like that new jobs to be open, and it was 168 or something
Yeah,
jobs were
crazy.
created or filled. It's just going to keep getting worse if we can't continue to meet the demand.
Absolutely. And I feel a shift, and it could be because I'm closer to, you know, what my algorithms tell me is around the skilled trades and looking at that gap and things. But I do see a shift in parents being more willing to entertain a different career path outside of college for their kids. It's not across the board, but I just see a little bit more of a consideration given how public we have, put all the entire industry who's working with the hands-on workforce saying how great of a career it can be and how much the need is to run our country. It really has helped at least caused those parents to pause for a second and say, maybe I should consider this. So I've seen a shift in that at least.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm a little bit off point too right now. This, Amanda, we have a spaceship going around the moon on its way back to Earth right now, with goals of going back and landing on the moon and building infrastructure up there. There's got to be some intersection between that goal and what your company does with training. You might not be sending a person to the moon to build something, but they certainly can be sitting in a module operating equipment up there from Earth.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sky's the limit, no pun intended there, on what we can do with technology. And it really there's a lot of interesting technology in the crane side of things where people are and OEMs are exploring remote crane operation. And that is, again, to mitigate the risk for the individual in the crane. Typically, if a crane accident happens, the crane operator can be a byproduct of that, whether they get injured or, it's a near miss. And so they're exploring remote crane operation. And then there's just a ton of opportunity for technology to de-risk those environments for us. And I think that's where we need to lean in and make sure that when we're educating the workforce there, we're doing it in a scalable way because we do need, tens of thousands of people coming into that category, in any geographic area or any different, industry vertical. So we really need to make sure that we're using technology to be able to scale that education and then focusing on the hands-on component where necessary.
Yeah, it's a big, I mean, that's a big piece, for it all to be integrated in the technology. It's going to be always advancing. And that's what we've been able to learn through Interplay is that your team is just expanding in all different areas, but absolutely just adding so much value for these companies to just, you know, implement the simulated training seamlessly. So I think that'd be something really nice to kind of dive into. What does that look like? So if someone is working with Interplay, how does it start? How does it get developed and implemented into their systems?
That's a great question. So we have simulations and immersive learning that is on a couple of different platforms. So we have the virtual reality crane simulator that we've talked a little bit about, and we also have, standard online platform where we can go through rigging simulations, which is a really exciting result of the acquisition of ITI. So we have since used interplay capabilities and focused on ITI's legacy, markets on the crane and rigging side of things and are able to now simulate rigging inspection and selection as the rigger is tasked or the employee is tasked to make sure that they know how to inspect rigging, what meets retirement criteria, what should be used in the lift, how they select the right piece of rigging, right? A lot of, all of our rigging has safety factors built in, and yet we still have overload accidents. So that means we're probably not selecting the right thing or we did not apply it correctly. And so that's been a really exciting thing to see how simulation can be not only immersive in VR, which is a capability across all of our disciplines, but also how it weaves into the broader training for those organizations. So it kind of goes back to something I started with in the beginning of really understanding what the employer wants as a result in terms of skill sets or activities that the employee can do. And then we aim to build out a training program with these simulations peppered in at the appropriate places to either teach an activity, reinforce an activity, or assess on an activity. So we'll have those different levels where it could be in teaching mode or it could be in challenger mode, where we really want to know, well, does Jess know now? He has been taught, he has been retaught and shown examples, and now we're going to go through and assess that. So we'll build out training plans and learning paths that are specific to the employer's workforce. And we'll use our, hundreds and hundreds of hours of content to make sure that it is either creating an opportunity for skill mastery or skill progression, depending on what, trade they're looking at.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's from A to Z. I mean, it's covering, one, and that's where I would imagine it would kind of parallel to manual training as well. Is that right? Or how would that kind of differ? I mean, from your simulated training compared to the manual training, does that,
And by
yeah.
yeah, by manual, do you mean like hands-on training?
Yeah,
Is that what you
yeah,
mean?
the hands-on, just like you said, where it's implemented a little bit in both. But as you mentioned, we're trying to close the gap and be able to get people in these, in these positions as quick as possible. I mean, I don't think, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not going to be fully replaced quite yet. But technology's been around for so long, VR's been around for so long. So how does that, from simulated to your manual training, in terms of retention, how does that compare?
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but I'm very careful to not position it as simulation versus hands-on because there's a really an appropriate place for both. And there's opportunities to combine them to where we do have a more scalable solution. But the evidence really does show that immersive training can improve knowledge acquisition. So that's where we really want to lean into it. With it having the opportunity to improve retention relative to traditional methods, because that's typically a one stop experience. Then what we want to do is come back on the back end and reinforce those concepts so that we are getting that repetition throughout, so that when they're tasked to go out into the field, they've really had the opportunity to learn it and as needed in a hands-on environment. And we typically um, reserve that for the high skilled, high risk, lots of critical thinking involved, that, those are when we want those hands on environments. And then we can supplement both on the front end and the back end with the immersive technology and training environments, whether it be, video reinforcement or simulation reinforcement. Um, and so my practical view is that immersive training helps people remember because they are making decisions and reacting. They're not just listening. And so that's where I really think we have to look at what is the best delivery method for the outcome that we need for that role or that employee, and then lean into it there. And you mentioned it, Danny, but hands-on training is not as scalable. So we want to reserve those funds and that time for when it is necessary.
Yeah, like you said, it's not a one all be all. It's like you said, it's not the it absolutely should be supplementing, in my opinion, on both ends. And but like just if we're seeing a bigger ramp up in new employees, that's what we want to see. And you're the you're ahead of the revenue piece on the interplay side of things, so you probably are talking about numbers with people too. I mean, what's the employee to from training to employee turnaround for that right now?
I want to make sure I understand your question, Danny. So are you asking like
Hmm. Yeah, in regards to just new employees through the programs, are they do they tend to go through the
oh,
program a little bit quicker? Are they staying within the company? What does that look like?
yes, absolutely. So, sorry, I didn't understand your question. That's to me being able to ramp more quickly and then have this retention lever is one of the most practical benefits because the companies that are using simulation well and see the benefits of it, they're going to get more the workers are going to get more repetitions earlier, and they get to experience those scenarios that they might not encounter for weeks or months in the field, and then they accelerate their confidence and readiness. There's a lot to say about company culture, and when a company pours into you, you will pour into it. And so feeling like they are willing to really meet them where they are and advance their skills, a lot of times that takes being creative and making sure that the learner has the opportunity to um, do what it is that we're asking them to do in a safe, controlled environment, so they don't feel pressured to know information before they've actually had the opportunity to learn it. So I would, again, stop short of saying that simulation replaces all field time, because it doesn't, but it really does help compress that early learning curve. And that's where I really lean in. There are some of our organizations that, because of their geographic location and the competitiveness of where they are located, at their attrition is really high, where they see somebody maybe jump ship for 25, 50 cents, 10 cents, an hour more. And so it really helps us when we can design a metric that we are measuring in partnership with them on speed to competency. What can we do to enter those workers into the field safely and competently to do X tasks? And we really try to reduce that and compress it down using technology.
That's absolutely awesome. Yes, I think me and Danny are both seeing that in other trades. You talk about the traditional 4-year apprentice to
Mhm.
journeyman school, going two or three times a week to learn that. What we're seeing now is not just with VR, but just video um,
Mhm.
that can be integrated into the learning process. Um, the young adults are already used to all the technological side of that. Growing up, they've had a cell phone in their hand since birth.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're doing that 4-year apprenticeship program much quicker, or they're finding a route to be employed at the journeyman level, making the wages without the certificates.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we have customers and partner organizations that we serve that have skilled trades programs that, are really focused on the workforce development side. And they are also using technology to make sure that they are creating the most skilled worker possible to enter into the workforce and compressing that time down, because those people, they could be paying a significant chunk of money to go into those trades programs, and they need to quickly enter the workforce. And so they're also looking for ways to compress that learning time down. And it does allow for, like, when we replace classroom with video experiences, they're learning those concepts better. To your point, like, the young people have, grown up
Yeah,
learning anything they wanted on YouTube. And so if we can replace that classroom experience with a video experience, then we can better utilize that instructor for those activities and reinforcing the concepts and teaching hands-on components.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely seeing a shift on that side of
Mhm.
the training program, not just for entry level, but for mastering at the whatever level.
Yeah, it seems like the future is bright. I mean, where do you see it, Amanda? Through safety, the new technologies that may be coming out, the trainings. Where do you see the future in? Well, one for Interplay, and then also the industry.
Sure. I agree that it's bright. I um, wake up with a passion for this type of work because I think we just have so much opportunity to grow. I do think that the future is going to be more measurable. So that's one thing that we're heavily focused on is the data and the insights that these employers or organizations need to make the right decisions about who's performing what work. And so I really do feel like the more we can create these data points for these organizations, the more measurable our future will be. We won't have these blanket assumptions around what is needed in these craft categories that we're serving. I think it's also going to be more immersive. And so I think about the willingness to adopt technology, even those that are not new to the workforce today. It's just embedded in our everyday life. And so we're looking for ways to reinforce the concepts. And a lot of that has to do with the immersion into the technology to get experience in them. And I also think it's going to be more scalable. When you think about stuff that's happening in the market, like data center projects and the construction of them and then the maintenance of them, thinking about the, thousands and thousands of workers that one employer might need to scale up given a project that they won, they have to have a fast but reliable solution into educating those people. And so I think as our company and others advance, we are really creating a scalable option to have, measurable insights and data about what workers they have, what they need, and what they need to be educated on to perform the work properly. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that safety is going to continue to matter, right? So that's a critical element as those safety considerations across all skilled trades matter. And so we'll have to make sure that we are continually adapting to educating our employees on those because unfortunately we still have because we still serve these high risk environments, there are still organizations that lose people to these skilled trades, all the time. And so keeping that at the forefront of making sure that all of our skilled craftsmen go home every day to their families is what's, guiding the future to make these solutions more palpable for employers.
Absolutely. You brought up 2 points that I wanna, go on. So one, the last 20, 25 years, the regulatory, environment has made the playing field for between men and women a lot more even. You're not out there building something based on brute strength and, physical ability. You're doing it because the safety standards have helped even the playing field a lot. Do you see that in the crane and rigging industry?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that, not just crane operation, but rigging technology advances all the time. They have made ways for women to be successful in the lifting industry. I know many, many women crane operators who are, I would say arguably are better at their craft than some men because of their patience and it really is a delicate craft when it comes to how you are viewing the decisions that have to be made on the front end of making a lift and then in the actual scenarios, performing the lifting activities. I've seen women be very successful across all roles within the lifting industry. I've seen many of those women advance into supervisory roles and have positions like lift director and site supervisor. And there's just a ton of opportunity. And I think that, like all skilled trades, it's very welcoming to women and creating equal opportunity relative to the education side of things. And so I would encourage all women to pursue craft um, roles as they're looking at, where do they want to lean into their career. And specifically on the lifting side of things, there is a ton of earnings potential as you continue to advance your skills. So, there's things where you can make as much money as you're willing to work when you work construction and turnaround and things like that. And there's opportunities for massive earnings there. And then there's others that are more consistent from a scheduling perspective, but create long-term opportunity when you find those positions embedded within organizations. So there's a ton of opportunity there for both men and women.
Absolutely. And the other point I wanted to play on, you use data to help track lots of things. But from a parent's perspective, thinking I'm sending out Billy or Sue into the construction industry, how does that data collection and the way Interplay is adapted to safety, has the safety use accidents or close calls or whatever as a data point that have helped you in the training process? Is that making the industry safer?
Absolutely. I mean, we measure with certain organizations. So we look for metrics to measure with any of our customers. They are going to have specific measures that we track alongside them and create dashboards and visibility for those. We have some that are working in really repetitive environments where you run a additional risk factor there for having more incidents because you're doing something repetitively. And so we often will measure things like near misses, incidents, and in all cases, when we've applied education to those, we've been able to reduce them or contribute to their no lost man hours in those skills. And so it's really fun to be able to point back to the learning how the considerations, because it's not always about knowing how to turn the wrench. It's about the critical decisions to pick up the wrench and put it on the thing. And so making sure that our students are equipped with the critical thinking around their activities is where we're going to see a lot of the risk reduction, thus, being able to track a lower number on any sort of incidents or near misses they might have.
Awesome. So that's a nice little clip that we should have more parents listen to.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. If parents aren't listening to this and just hearing, again, we here at the Trades Podcast, we're always, throwing out the opportunities out there. And again, it's not just for anybody coming just out of high school. It's anybody looking for a career change, anybody looking to advance. And like Amanda mentioned, if you're a company and you want to hire someone on a faster level and be able to get them through a training process and have that implemented, this is where it starts. This is exactly where you need to hear this. You got to share it. You got to spread it out to everybody, friends, family. This is the Trades Podcast. We've been sitting here with Amanda Long, the Executive Vice President of Revenue over at Industrial Training International, ITI. Interplay company. What's just amazing for you to be out here and just talking to everybody and letting everybody know about the industry and just how amazing it is out there in Houston. You guys got a lot of business going on and a lot of work that's the groundwork. So you guys are doing a great job out there.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciated the conversation.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Amanda.